Good afternoon, everyone. This is the weekly MLOps demo for October 15th, after almost 2 weeks without a recording. Here we are again. So what we did this week was we finally have a first MR integrating our BI-pen diff into GitLab. So we are on our way to actually making this into production and putting it out there for users. Right now it's rough. We're still sharpening, so we're still fixing some edge cases and having some ideas and discussions, but it is in progress. So you can see here on GitLab already, this is on the local instance, but you can see here, this is the diff for a commit. So it's a lot simpler to read. You can actually see exactly what happened. We are also using now the percent notation rather than the HTML notation that we had before. This is a lot easier to read on a text file, and the other is a lot more useful when displaying as like HTML, right? Because then you can just add some CSS and make it prettier. But for text, it's a lot better. So the percent notation made a lot helpful. You also have this as a merge request already. So for example, I could see on a side by side. Of course, this is a new file and you cannot really see a lot of additions, but it helps this way already to have an idea of what it will look like. So right now on this case, on this issue, the next steps is just to iron out some rough edges. For example, over here, it shows every line on the diff, but if you select to show the next 20 lines, for example, it will just break and show like the untransformed blob file. So there's still some. And still, for example, here, since we get the diff first from Gitly and then we do the transformation, most of the things are still use the stats generated from Gitly. So, for example, if you try to open a diff that is too large, it's still going to be too large, even with the transformation that should reduce this a lot. We need to look more into Gitly, not look into Gitly, but just disable their warnings for IPNV because we transform it on the front end either way. So for example, it says here 200 lines addition, and the original file is actually 200 lines of addition. But if you look at here, it's already the entire transformed. Now it's a 75 line diff. So we need to change here a little bit as well. Another thing from last week, we attended the World AI Summit here in Amsterdam. It was a conference, 2 days, very interesting. It was not really tech conference, but more of like a futurology, talking about how AI, the place of AI in the society from now on and a few years. So a lot of representatives from the government and from the industry. Really interesting sides being discussed there. And I got the opportunity to talk with a little bit with GitLab users about MLOps itself. So there were some vendors over there. There were some users, and I got to chat with them. And beyond the Jupyter, which was repeatedly one of the major pain points they had, another one was having a playbook that made it easier to integrate other tools with GitLab CI/CD. For example, how to integrate MLflow into GitLab, how to integrate with GitLab. So in the CI/CD pipeline, how to integrate Neptune, how to integrate any other tooling that we have with GitLab. So the idea of a playbook that you select your stack, okay, here I'm using MLflow with Kubeflow pipelines and X and Y for MLOps. How do I integrate this with GitLab? So this is something that we can actually pursue down the line as a next step after the Jupyter diff is done. So really, it will allow us a little bit to explore as well the space of MLOps tools that we have at vendors, and it might be a good idea to look into it. So as next steps is finishing up this merge request to add the 71477 to add Jupyter diff into GitLab, and the next step on this is to actually work on a rich viewer. Because, for example, here on the diff, you have images. This is invalid, but you could also have a valid image. You could also have math. We could have a renderer for this. So when you are looking at the diff, this doesn't tell you anything. Or it tells that the line was changed, but it doesn't tell you what image was in here. What is the change in the image? So this is what we want to add next, a rich viewer that actually renders these images, renders the math that is generated, and so on and so forth. So this was it for this week. See you in the next one.